Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Beithak podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the Long Beach GP for IndyCar. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant, how was it watching another IndyCar race at absurd hours?
Yeah, well, this one was rather difficult because, it was in California and the Pacific time and all those things. Because generally on the East Coast, I guess in India it's 11:30 p.m., but this one was 1:30 p.m. or something like that, which was rather difficult. But the I have a very bad sleeping schedule, and I was able to watch the end of the race basically, the second half of the race properly. So yeah.
Yep, after Colton Herta crashed out. But obviously, we're here to talk about the three things from IndyCar's weekend in Long Beach. And obviously, the number one has to be once again Penske makes it 3 wins in 3 races, and Newgarden wins 2 on the trot. I mean, we've seen Joseph. No, we haven't seen him, but we've heard of what Joseph Newgarden has done in the past.
Absolutely.
And if he's had such a strong season start, especially with the way Penske has started the season, with Scott McLaughlin finishing, the race in first place, the season opener, and then finishing second behind Joseph Newgarden in the last one. Um, I just can't wait to see what the Penske team is about to bring this season. And looking ahead, just can't wait to see what they can do in the Indy 500. Last year we saw them struggle, and this year it's gonna be a win-win-win. So if this keeps on going, it's gonna be interesting to see how an intra-team battle plays out in IndyCar. We've seen how things happen in Formula One with Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. In that has been the most recent one we have seen,
Yeah.
but it'll be interesting to see for us, for at least you and me who haven't followed IndyCar for more than a couple of years, closely at least, to see how an intra-team battle plays out in this particular sport, and how these teams manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with I guess next up is the Indy GP and then Indy 500. So the month of May is here, and the bragging rights in the team, and the ultimate title of whatever is almost there. So again, Penske has been sensational. 3 races, 3 wins. Joseph Newgarden, as you rightly said, has done some great things in the past, which we have not seen. But now that we see him racing, we know that he is absolutely magnificent. But I was pretty surprised to see Scott McLaughlin back in 16 or 15 or 16, somewhere around that.
I guess you didn't catch it, but after the first round of pit stops, he made a mistake trying to get a run on Tatiana Calderon, who he was trying to lap, and
Right.
he hit the wall, the inside wall at the infamous hairpin, which Baudet also hit this
Uh,
weekend. Except
yeah.
Baudet recovered really well, and Scott couldn't. That was the only difference. But yeah, that is what happened with Scott McLaughlin. Um, I was gonna say something, and then I forgot. Yeah, New Garden. No easy task to stave off, to battle a Romain Grosjean, a late charging Romain Grosjean on a new softs, basically the new primary tires. On a set of new primary tires, we saw how easily Romain Grosjean got around Alex Palou, and then Newgarden did great to not only hold him off, but hold him off at the restart too.
Yeah.
We saw Marcus Ericsson make a mistake under pressure, but not Joseph Newgarden. Just goes to show what he's made of, and why, given how well Penske has started, this might just be another championship for him. But let's talk about the second thing, and that is the biggest turnaround this weekend has been for Andretti. Andretti has joined the fight after a slow start. Romain Grosjean finishing P2. I think they did great on strategy, great in the pits. Heartbreak for Herta. We're going to talk about Colton Herta in a little bit. And Alexander Rossi also had a pretty good race after colliding, uh, having a collision. I don't remember with whom, but early in the race, and then dropping a few places with Felix Rosenquist, and then dropping a few places. I think the test that Andretti did at Barber Motorsport Parks helped them unlock some pace. I think that is what the news was, or the rumors were at least, that they learned a little bit more about their current car. And I think, this is a great comeback. And as always, it's always good to see the biggest three names in IndyCar fight for the championship. And I can't wait to see how the season unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the test at Baba Motorsport, and it just makes me wonder, these teams are running basically a spec car with a spec chassis and a spec engine, basically. I mean, it's not like Formula One, where you have made everything yourself and you test everything and everything is different from the other team. So for IndyCar and similarly for Formula E, for them to find differences, find performance, and do that over and over each year, because more or less the cars are same each year, right?
Yeah, they've had this chassis since 2012.
Exactly. So for them to find pace, then struggle, then find pace again, it's incredible what the engineers and what the mechanics do. So I
But
mean,
but yeah, talking about that, I think the race did a great piece on the development battle that is there in IndyCar, because they are still developing their own suspension systems. They're still doing a lot of electronics work and things like that, and chasing setups every weekend. And
right.
just like in any other series, these are changeable conditions. You never, you expect the temperatures and the track temperatures and the whatever the other variables are to be in a similar range every year when you go there every year. But that is not the case with IndyCar, really, because if you remember, we went to Long Beach at the end of the season
Yeah,
last year, and
absolutely.
this is at the start of the season. So
Absolutely.
you're not going at the same time. So there's a lot of variables that keep changing in the sport, even though you have the same car basically, like you said. So it's always a challenge. But Romain Grosjean, P2, I think, would have loved to see him win personally. But I think that's a good start to his season finally after a DNF in not Barber, sorry, in Texas due to a mechanical failure.
Yeah, I mean, Grosjean is loving his life in the USA. We saw him last year in a midfield team, but still performing to his true potential, basically. And now moving to Andretti with Andretti back on the bounce in that distinctive DHL car is incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to spot that car,
Yeah, exactly.
given how difficult it is to spot cars every weekend. But let's talk about the third and probably the most important piece of headline from this weekend, and that is we need to talk about Colton Herta. Uh, and the way I would describe his, championship bid over the last couple of seasons and this season now is that he is his own worst enemy. And it's a bit like if I could draw, not it's not a perfect comparison, but it is somewhat there, and that is, compare him to Max Verstappen a little bit, and that is, uh, he's like a dog with a bone, and he's just gonna go for it no matter what. It's gonna be all or nothing with him in regards of performance, and maybe that is what we've seen Max Verstappen suffer in the past. The only difference was Max Verstappen, when he did that, he didn't have a championship winning car, although he did come close to losing his championship last year with the same attitude. Um, and we've seen Colton Herta do that to himself before, and once again he did the same thing this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Colton Herta, we know he has the pace. We know he has the outright talent to bid for the championships, to be in the top five consistently. And obviously, he has the car. But somehow, somewhere or the other, he loses the plot and he is not as consistent as everyone expects him to be, which is difficult for, a star of the future, as you rightly said, Max Verstappen. But I believe, and I don't know, I'm just picking this up from Colton's comments, the past news about Andretti and Formula One and everything all around that. And he did make a few comments over the last few weeks about how some drivers are getting chances and while he's not, or whatever. I don't remember that exactly, but there may be a part that, it, these things can play in your heads or somewhere. But
I
that is
mean,
only
talking
for
about that, it's played for Pato Award. We've seen
yeah,
Pato Award
exactly.
fall back, and in the recent interview, I think with Racer.com with Marshall Pruitt, he talked about his struggles and how all of these external factors and things that are going on in the background are affecting him, and how the way he has had to change his feedback because of what the Formula One side of McLaren has told him has affected his racing, and he's not been able to do as well as he would have, and he's switched back to his original style of working with his race engineer and whatnot. So maybe Colton Herta is trying to prove not only to himself and the IndyCar community that he can be a champion, but he's also trying to prove it to the bigger racing community and catch some eyeballs from F1 to give him a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because we know that Colton Herta is one of the champions of the future and one of the greats of the era. Basically, we can't for sure say that he'll be a great of IndyCar as a whole, but one of the greats of the era. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he changes his racing style because he definitely needs to work on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, people have talked about this. We've seen Scott Dixon, multiple IndyCar Series champion, and Alex Pillow, who won his first championship last year in only his second season. And the difference is temperament. I mean, they're all
Absolutely.
talented people. Yes, Colton Herta has a little bit more pace, but it's nothing without temperament, and that is the biggest change we saw in Max Verstappen last season. Even though there is a good argument to say that he kind of lost the plot a little bit towards the end of the season, but he did much better than he would have done maybe 3 years ago. So that is the key difference. And obviously, yesterday's race was a bit of attrition, and it was kind of like whoever won was obviously decided on the track, but it was also decided a lot in the pits. And the reason that Colton Herta lost out during the first round of pit stops was because he didn't have the best in lap out lap, and he was much slower in the pits. So that really played into why his frustration with the team. And Andretti has had a bad pit stop record this season so far. So not surprised that the likes of Newgarden and Pillow were able to jump him basically during the first round of pit stop, and were able to maintain that lead throughout the next round. So obviously there's something there. He is working with his dad, another respected member of the racing community. So we'll see how his season progresses, because clearly Andretti have a fast car. Colton Herta is talented, and literally everyone wants to see him win the championship. Literally everyone.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that those were the big three talking points. One of the talking points while I was watching the race, I was going to bring up is Marcus Ericsson the invisible man, the invisible title contender of IndyCar, and then he just bins it on the restart. But I think the point still stands. Even last season, he did get himself into championship contention at one point. It was still a little bit of a long shot, but I think he finished P5 in the championship or something like that. So he did pretty well last season, and he has been consistent. He would have finished third or fourth at least, in this race, but kind of binned it there. Great pan from the cameraman to show Marcus Ericsson standing by his
Yeah.
car at the end of the race.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
but I wouldn't count him out. He has been the leading Ganassi so far. Obviously, Polo, had a great result this weekend. But other than that, in the first two races, Marcus Ericsson was the leading Ganassi, and they seem to have found a little bit more pace on the road courses, which they had struggled with previously.
Marcus Ericsson, you know, his few years in IndyCar have been pretty good. Yeah, and as you said, last year he was in contention, but again, he is consistent. He is consistent, no doubt about that. But I think he just needs to raise that consistency a notch up. He's consistently in the top eight, I would say right now. He needs to be consistently in the top five. And he was racing like I missed the start of the race, but he was in a good position in uh, yesterday. Sorry, he was in a good position yesterday, but then again bended. And his incident reminded me of one thing, and Romain Grosjean was just behind him. So it was,
Yeah.
I think Roman hit us.
I was about to say, Marcus is like, Roman hit me.
Yeah, but
How the turntables this
jokes
time,
apart, Marcus Ericsson, even in Formula One, we saw those flashes of performance and flashes of in the car that he had. He had those moments of good racing, good brilliance, and I think he can convert them. And I think he had convert that Ganassi car into a good result consistency, basically.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. And as usual, Scott Dixon, he was on the alternate strategy. He pitted early, but he made it work coming through the field from P16 to finish, I think, P5 yesterday. Sorry, P6 yesterday. Great drive from him too. But another person who turned his luck around a little bit was Pato O'Ward. Had a terrible start to the season, not even in the top 10 in both races, and finally having a P5 finish this weekend at Long Beach. He obviously, I alluded to it earlier. He talked about how he was trying to change the way he went racing and his feedback style, but it didn't work for him. So he's back, trying to get back to himself, is what he said. Trying to how he was basically before he tried to make these changes. So it'll be interesting to see how the title challenger from last season, whether or not he can mount another title challenge this year with the Arrow McLaren SP team. But very surprising to see Felix Rosenqvist, qualify so well at Texas and now at Long Beach. Obviously, he still doesn't have the race pace, but still a very, very interesting result from Felix Rosenqvist in the qualifying session, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Felix Rosenqvist, again, he's one of those guys who never got a real shot at a good Formula One seat, but he was always very consistent in the junior Formula, in the surrounding series, basically, apart from Formula One. So he has the pace, he has the talent, and it was great to see him take pole, I guess, at Texas. So yeah, it will be interesting to see
Absolutely.
how
And
I mean the McLaren the McLaren IndyCar team is one of the most followed teams apart from the big three, right? And it's going to be very interesting how they can go about, you know.
I mean, Zach Brown is managing that team,
Yeah.
so you only expect the very best. And last but not least, shout out to Kyle Kirkwood getting his first top 10 with AJ Foyt Racing this weekend. The Indy Lights champion from last year, clearly showing what he's made of. Really, really demonstrating his potential, and it'll be interesting to see how his season ramps up. Hopefully a win this season for him, and a couple podium finishes would be definitely nice. But anything else from the race that you want to talk about, Vedant?
Well, not from the race, but I guess we'll like to see Christian Lungard and Callum Eilert match Kyle Kirkwood as contending for the Rookie of the Year award. Obviously,
For the
there's
rookie of the
Tatiana
year.
Cordon as well, but uh, yeah, it should be a good competition in that category as well.
I think Tatiana Calderon did really well to finish that race in a race where so many people crashed. Marcus Ericsson, David Malukas, Takuma Sato, Devlin DiFrancesco crashed too, I believe. I think
Simon
even Callum
Pagenaud
Eilert,
in the garden.
Simon Pagenaud. Well, that's a touchy one. But yeah. So I think Tatiana Calderon did well. Obviously, she needs a little bit more pace from her car, but I think she's with a good team, and hopefully we'll see some progress towards the end of the season. It's the first season and first full-time season, so obviously there's a lot of things to learn as we go. But yeah, that's all from our side. I think going into the month of May, we're all. I think the feel-good story will be that Jimmy Johnson wins the Indy 500. That will be the most feel-good story, especially after the accident that he had this weekend. He had a pretty terrible weekend all in all, and I was surprised that he still went on. Given the fact that obviously he wants to do well in IndyCar overall, but his short-term goal is to win the 500 to really pursue that, and he still didn't put it at risk the way he put it. But even then, just not being as cautious as maybe I would have been. But again, I'm not a seven-time NASCAR champion who has raced cars all his life. So what do I know? But obviously, the feel-good story will be Jimmy Johnson winning the Indy 500 this May.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he Jimmy Johnson needs all the time he can get and all the hard racing he can get in that IndyCar. Because the last time a marquee driver came to Indy 500 to attempt to win it, it did not end well with Fernando Alonso because he did not have the experience of an IndyCar around the year, and just experience of the IndyCar basically. So I think Jimmy Johnson is going into the season with that mindset, that every second of track time that he can get and every second of meaningful racy track time that he can get in that IndyCar is going to be very beneficial for him.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. But yeah, that's all from our side. Thank you, Vedant, for joining me. It was great talking IndyCar with you and following this season. Kudos to you to be awake that late at night to watch the race, because I know I couldn't stay awake to watch the Formula One race, and I woke up in the middle of the race to catch, finally watch whatever was left. But yeah, and we'll continue to bring you the latest from IndyCar here on Motorsport Baithak.